The galaxy thought they knew what terror looked like. They'd seen the Kraxxian battle serpents, 30 feet of scaled death, venom that could melt through ship hulls, jaws that could crush a reinforced combat mech. For 300 cycles, no species had survived a direct challenge from a Kraxxian warlord and their bonded serpent. Then humanity walked into the arena. Commander Vexenear stood in the center of the combat pit, his crimson scales gleaming under the harsh lights of 1,000 recording drones. Behind him, his battle serpent Esisistrak coiled and uncoiled, each movement rippling with barely contained violence. The creature's eyes glowed with an intelligence that had been enhanced through generations of genetic warfare programs. Its fangs dripped with a neurotoxin so potent that a single drop could paralyze an elephant-sized creature in seconds. The Galactic Council chambers erupted in nervous chittering and electromagnetic pulses of concern. 12 species representatives watched from their reinforced observation boxes. This was supposed to be a diplomatic summit, but Vexenear had invoked the ancient right of trial by combat, a challenge no species could refuse without forfeiting their seat on the council. The humans had only been members for 2 standard years. When the human representative stepped into the arena, the entire chamber fell silent. Not the silence of anticipation, but the silence of a funeral. The human was smaller than Vexenear by nearly 2 feet. He wore simple gray fatigues with no visible armor or weapons. His name was Mitchell Hayes, and according to the dossier, he'd been a wildlife handler before joining Earth's diplomatic corps. "You insult me with this offering," Vexenear hissed, his translator struggling to convey the contempt in his native tongue. "Where are your warriors? Your battle beasts? Your weapons of mass destruction?" Hayes smiled. Not the aggressive display of teeth that many predator species used to intimidate, but something else. Something that made several of the more empathic council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I brought a weapon," Hayes said calmly. He tapped a small device on his wrist. "She's in the holding pen. Give me just a second." The chamber's main viewing screen split to show the adjacent creature containment area. Inside a reinforced cage sat a relatively small Earth animal, maybe 3 feet long, with a stocky build and distinctive black and white markings. It was grooming itself with what appeared to be complete disinterest in the proceedings. "That?" Vexenear's laugh was a sound like grinding metal. "That is your champion? A small fur-bearer." He turned to the council boxes. "The humans mock this sacred tradition. They send a creature that wouldn't feed my serpent for more than a single meal." The Thylorian ambassador leaned toward the Zephyrite next to her. "I've studied Earth fauna. That appears to be what they call a honey badger. The files say they're persistent hunters." "Persistent?" The Zephyrite's tentacles quivered with barely suppressed laughter. "Against a Kraxxian battle serpent? It will be over in seconds." Hayes had walked to a reinforced door at the edge of the arena. He input a code, and the door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The honey badger looked up, nose twitching. "Hey, Diabla," Hayes said conversationally. "See that big snake over there?" He pointed at Esisistrak, who had risen to full height, hood flared in aggressive display. "Fetch!" The word hung in the air for exactly 2 seconds. Then all hell broke loose. Diabla didn't charge. She didn't roar or posture or make any of the threatening displays that combat creatures were trained to perform. She simply started walking toward the serpent with the kind of unhurried confidence that apex predators reserve for prey that has nowhere to run. Esisistrak struck first. His training was impeccable, a lightning-fast lunge designed to inject venom and withdraw before the opponent could react. His fangs, each the length of a human forearm, punched through the space where Diabla had been a fraction of a second earlier. The honey badger had rolled. Not scrambled, not leaped. Rolled with the casual efficiency of an animal that had been dodging snake strikes since the day it learned to walk. She came up directly underneath the serpent's extended neck and did something that made every predator species in the council chambers lean forward in shock. She bit down and held on. "Impossible," Vexenear breathed. The scales, their reinforced bioceramic composite. Nothing that size should have the jaw strength to. Diabla had already torn a chunk free. Not a scratch, not a superficial wound. An actual piece of the battle serpent's armor plating. She chewed it twice, swallowed, and went back for more with the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered their favorite food. Sistrak shrieked, a sound no one in the chamber had ever heard from a Kraxxian serpent. These creatures were bioengineered to feel reduced pain, to fight through injuries that would kill natural-born predators. But Diabla wasn't trying to kill it quickly. She was eating it alive, one methodical bite at a time. The serpent thrashed, its massive body coiling and uncoiling as it tried to dislodge the honey badger. It slammed her against the arena floor with enough force to crack the reinforced concrete. Diabla grunted, shook her head, and bit deeper. The serpent dragged her across the arena, scraping her against walls and obstacles. She held on, teeth locked in flesh, those small black eyes showing absolutely zero concern for her own welfare. She's not even trying to avoid damage, the Thylorian ambassador muttered, her scanner displaying real-time biometric data. Her pain receptors are firing, but she's completely ignoring them. What kind of creature? The kind that evolved on Earth, Hayes said quietly. He hadn't moved from his position at the edge of the arena. Diabla there? She's tangled with lions, hyenas, leopards, things that should absolutely kill her. She's been bitten by cobras, puff adders, and black mambas. Got stung by a swarm of African bees once and spent the whole time she was covered in them digging out their hive for the honey inside. Vexenar's confidence was cracking. SSS Thrak. Venom Protocol 7. The battle serpent's body convulsed, and its secondary venom glands activated. The ones that released the neurotoxin capable of dropping a charging rhino in 3 seconds. The poison flooded into Diabla's system through a dozen bite wounds the serpent had managed to inflict during its thrashing. Diabla's movements slowed. For exactly 5 seconds, the council chambers collectively held their breath. Then the honey badger burped, gave her head another shake, and continued eating. That's not possible, the Zephyrite delegate stammered. The toxicology report says that venom should work on things that aren't honey badgers, Hayes finished. Diabla's got this interesting immune system. She's been building up resistance to snake venom since she was a cub. That's kind of her whole deal. Find venomous snakes, eat venomous snakes, take a little nap if the venom is particularly spicy, wake up and find more venomous snakes. SSS Thrak was starting to slow. Not from pain, the serpent's pain inhibitors were still functioning. It was slowing because it was missing significant portions of its musculature. Diabla had worked her way through the armor plating around the neck and was now systematically dismantling the serpent's internal structure. She wasn't trying to deliver a killing blow to vital organs. She was just eating her way through, one bite at a time, with the patient determination of a creature that had no natural predators and no concept of giving up. The galaxy's ultimate battle serpent was being consumed by a 30-pound mammal with an attitude problem. Vexenar made his first mistake out of desperation. He activated his neural link and pushed SSS Thrak into berserk mode, a last resort that burned through the serpent's remaining energy reserves in exchange for a massive spike in aggression and speed. The battle serpent's eyes went from glowing amber to blazing red. It released every chemical warfare agent in its arsenal simultaneously. Paralytic mist, acidic spray, and a pheromone-based fear toxin that could send entire battalions running in terror. Diabla inhaled the toxic cloud, sneezed twice, and kept eating. What is that thing made of? Vexenar roared, his composure completely shattered. Around the arena, council members were frantically accessing Earth's biological databases, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror as they began to understand. The Thylorian ambassador's voice shook as she read from her datapad. According to these records, the honey badger has the thickest skin relative to body size of any animal on Earth. It's loose enough that if a predator bites down, the honey badger can twist around inside its own skin to counterattack. Its metabolism can process toxins that would kill animals 10 times its size. And it has no documented fear response to any predator, no matter how large. But surely it must have some survival instinct, the Zephyrite protested. Some sense of self-preservation? Hayes actually laughed at that. You'd think, wouldn't you? We've got footage of honey badgers picking fights with full-grown water buffalo, attacking crocodiles, raiding beehives while being stung thousands of times, and one memorable incident where a badger ate a puff adder, passed out from the venom, took a 2-hour nap, and then woke up to finish eating the same snake. He paused, watching Diabla work through another section of the serpent. They're not brave. Brave implies understanding danger and facing it anyway. Honey badgers just don't have the neurological wiring to recognize that they should be afraid of anything. In the arena, SSS Thrax's movements were becoming increasingly uncoordinated. The serpent had lost perhaps 20% of its body mass, and the wounds were finally overwhelming even its enhanced biology. It attempted one final attack, a desperate constriction maneuver designed to crush opponents inside massive coils of muscle. Diabla let herself be wrapped up. For a moment, it looked like the serpent might actually secure a victory. The coils tightened, applying thousands of pounds of pressure. Then Diabla did something that would be replayed in xenobiology classes for the next century. She twisted inside her loose skin, just like she'd done thousands of times with python attacks back on Earth, positioned her head toward the serpent's body, and started eating her way out from the inside. The shriek that SSS Thrax released wasn't just pain. It was the sound of a creature that had finally learned what it meant to be prey. The serpent's coils loosened in panic, and Diabla emerged covered in blood and viscera, chewing contentedly on what appeared to be a section of the serpent's digestive tract. Vexenar's scales had gone pale. "Mercy," he whispered. Then, louder, "I invoke surrender. By the old codes, Oh, that's not how this works," Hayes interrupted, his voice still conversational, but with an edge that cut through the arena like a blade. "You invoke trial by combat. On my planet, we've got a saying, don't start none, won't be none. You started this. Diabla gets to finish it." The honey badger was already climbing the wounded serpent like a tree, working her way toward the head. SSS Thrax tried to shake her off, but its movements were weak now, blood loss and tissue damage finally overwhelming its engineered endurance. "Please," Vexenar's voice cracked. "That serpent has been in my family for 4 generations. He's worth more than most planets. I'll pay any price. Should have thought about that before you decided humanity was weak enough to push around," Hayes said. He raised his voice slightly. "Diabla, good girl. Now the head." What followed took exactly 45 seconds. When it was over, the arena was silent except for the sound of Diabla crunching through the last remnants of the serpent's armored skull. She emerged from the carcass, gave herself a full-body shake that sprayed blood across the arena floor, and waddled back to Hayes with the unmistakable body language of a pet that expected praise and treats. Hayes produced a piece of dried meat from his pocket, something the later reports would identify as beef jerky, and tossed it to Diabla. She caught it, made a satisfied huffing sound, and proceeded to ignore the jerky in favor of walking back to the serpent's corpse for thirds. "That's my girl," Hayes said fondly. "Never wastes an opportunity." The council chamber remained frozen. 12 species, many of whom had civilizations spanning millions of years, tried to process what they just witnessed. The Kraxxian battle serpent program had been the cornerstone of military doctrine for centuries. Entire defensive strategies across multiple sectors were based on the assumption that nothing below capital ship-class weapons could stop a bonded serpent. A 30-pound mammal with an attitude problem had just eaten one for lunch. The Zephyrite ambassador was the first to speak. "Commander Hayes, I believe we need to discuss the full scope of Earth's wildlife." "Immediately." Hayes nodded slowly. "Yeah. I figured you might want to have that conversation." He pulled out a datapad and started scrolling. "So, Diabla here? She's not even in the top 10 most dangerous animals on Earth. She's just the one with the best personality for this kind of work." "Not in the top 10? Vexenar's voice was hollow. He was staring at the remains of SSS Thrax, his entire worldview crumbling in real time. "Then what?" "Well, you've got your big cats, lions, tigers, leopards. They're all heavier than Diabla and have the hunting skills to back it up. Then there's bears. Grizzlies, polar bears, Kodiak bears, those things can weigh 1,500 pounds of pure muscle and bad attitude. Crocodiles that can bite down with 5,000 pounds of pressure. Hippopotamuses that kill more humans per year than any other large animal. And that's just the land mammals." He scrolled further. In the oceans, you've got great white sharks, orcas, which we call killer whales for good reason, and various species of poisonous jellyfish, octopi, and cone snails. The cone snail, adorable little thing, fits in your palm, has venom that can kill you in minutes, and there's no antidote. The Thylaurian ambassador's skin had gone pale. But surely your apex predators are the most dangerous? You'd think, Hayes agreed. But actually, the most dangerous animal on Earth by pure body count? The mosquito. Little flying insect, smaller than your smallest digit, kills about 725,000 humans per year by transmitting diseases. We've been fighting a war against mosquitoes for our entire existence as a species, and they're winning. He looked up from the datapad. Oh, and there's also the parasitic wasps, the box jellyfish, the Australian funnel web spider, several species of ants that can kill humans through sheer numbers, and cassowaries, which are basically dinosaurs that forgot to go extinct and now have a personal grudge against everything that moves. Your planet is a death world, the Zephyrite whispered. Yeah, we get that a lot, Hayes said. Here's the thing, though. We didn't engineer any of these creatures. We didn't enhance them in laboratories or breed them for combat. They evolved naturally, in competition with each other, on a planet where the weather itself tries to kill you with hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. Earth doesn't produce survivors. It produces things that are too stubborn to die. He gestured at Diabla, who had carved out a comfortable spot inside the serpent's ribcage and appeared to be taking a food coma nap. Honey badgers didn't become fearless through training. They became fearless because anything afraid to fight gets eaten by something else. The ones that survived were the ones that looked at a lion and thought, yeah, I could take him. Vexenar finally tore his eyes away from the carnage. You sent a deliberately unimpressive creature to prove a point. I sent an honest representative of Earth's ecosystem, Hayes corrected. You wanted to see what humanity brings to the table? This is it. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the smartest or the fastest. But we come from a planet where this, he pointed at Diabla, is considered medium difficulty. And we domesticated it. The implications hung in the air like a physical weight. The council called for a recess. It lasted 6 hours, during which time delegations frantically contacted their homeworlds. Xenobiologists pulled up every available file on Earth's ecosystem, and military analysts ran combat simulations that made less sense the more they ran them. Hayes spent the time sitting in the arena, watching Diabla methodically work her way through the serpent's remains. She'd eaten so much that her stomach was visibly distended, but she kept going with the single-minded determination of a creature that had evolved to gorge whenever food was available because you never knew when the next meal might show up. When the council reconvened, there were new faces in several of the observation boxes, military consultants, chief scientists, and in the Kraxxian delegations box, someone who Hayes recognized as their supreme war chancellor. The chancellor spoke first. The Kraxxian Dominion formally withdraws our challenge and accepts humanity's position on the council without reservation. Smart, Hayes said simply. We have questions, the Thylaurian ambassador said. If your planet is this dangerous, how did your species survive long enough to develop civilization? Hayes leaned back in his chair. Same way any species survives on Earth, we got smart, we got creative, and we worked together. Humans aren't apex predators because we're strong. We're apex predators because we learned to throw rocks really accurately, then we learned to throw sharper rocks, then we learned to throw the sharp rocks from further away using tools, and eventually we learned to throw nuclear weapons. He paused. But mostly, we survived because we learned to make friends with the other survivors. You see, Earth has this interesting thing where lots of predators can actually be domesticated if you approach them right. We took wolves, pack hunters that could tear a human apart, and turned them into dogs. Now dogs help blind people navigate, detect cancer, find survivors in disaster zones, and keep people company when they're lonely. You domesticated your predators? The Zephyrite's tentacles were quivering with what might have been fear or fascination or both. Not just predators. Horses, oxen, elephants, we turned them into work animals. Cats, which are obligate carnivores, we convinced to live with us just because both species found it mutually beneficial. And honey badgers. He glanced at Diabla, who had finally stopped eating and was grooming blood off her fur. We don't exactly domesticate them. More like, we reach an understanding. Diabla works with me because I give her interesting things to fight and food when she's done. She stays with me because she wants to, and the day she doesn't want to, she'll just leave. That's the deal. The council members exchanged glances. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived a death world, they'd turned it into a resource. Every apex predator, every venomous creature, every hostile element of their environment had been studied, understood, and either befriended or neutralized. There's something else you should know, Hayes continued. Diabla is a rescue. She was injured by poachers when she was young, humans who were illegally hunting animals for profit. You know what happened when other humans found out? We tracked those poachers across 3,000 miles, arrested them, and threw them in prison. Then we rehabilitated Diabla and hundreds of other animals like her. He stood up, his expression serious. Earth taught us to be tough, but it also taught us to be protective. We fight like hell when we need to, but we also form bonds across species lines that most civilizations can't even comprehend. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not that we survived a death world. It's that we survived it and came out the other side still capable of compassion. Diabla chose that moment to waddle over, her belly so full she could barely walk. She bumped her head against Hayes's leg in what was unmistakably a gesture of affection. He reached down and scratched behind her ears, careful to avoid the blood-soaked patches of fur. This galaxy has been pretty peaceful for a long time, Hayes said. I hope it stays that way, but if someone decides to start trouble, just remember that humanity brought the honey badgers. And those are the nice ones. The silence that followed was the kind that comes when an entire civilization's understanding of the universe fundamentally shifts. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council passed Resolution 4782, unofficially known as the Earth Wildlife Acknowledgement Accord. It contained several key provisions. First, Earth was granted full Council membership with no probationary period. Second, humanity was asked, politely with great deference, to provide a comprehensive database of their planet's wildlife, with particular attention to anything that might be surprisingly dangerous relative to its size. Third, the Kraxxian battle Serpent program was officially retired. Not because they were banned, but because after watching the arena footage, every Kraxxian trainer independently decided they wanted nothing to do with facing Earth's animals ever again. Hayes stood in his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel, preparing a report for Earth Command. Diabla was curled up on his bunk, sleeping off the biggest meal of her life. She'd be cranky when she woke up. Honey badgers were always cranky. But she'd done her job perfectly. His communicator chimed. It was a message from the Thylorian ambassador. Commander Hayes, my government would like to establish a cultural exchange program focused on Earth's ecosystems and humanity's approach to coexistence with dangerous species. We believe there is much we can learn. Also, I have a personal question. You mentioned honey badgers are not in your top 10 most dangerous animals. What would you say is number 1? Hayes smiled and typed his response. That would be humans. We survived everything else on Earth, which means we had to be scarier than all of it combined. But here's the good news. We're also the most cooperative, most creative, and most likely to help our friends when they're in trouble. Choose which version of humanity you want to meet. He hit send and looked at Diabla, still sleeping peacefully despite having just dismantled the galaxy's ultimate weapon with nothing but teeth, claws, and absolute refusal to acknowledge the concept of giving up. That's what Earth produced. That's what humanity was. And the galaxy was just starting to understand what that meant. Want more HFY stories about humanity's wildest survival traits? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Next up, the day humanity introduced geese to the Intergalactic Peace Summit. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. See you in the next one.